The twin suns burned high over the dusty city of Vekros. A hot wind blew through the cracked towers, carrying the sound of chains and shouting voices. In the heart of the market square stood the Star Market Auction, the largest slave trading hub in this part of the galaxy. Merchants barked out prices. Buyers in fine robes walked past cages filled with the defeated. Aliens from all species stood trapped behind thick metal bars, young, strong, weak, old. Each one was tagged with a number. Each one was for sale. A short, fat alien with 6 eyes stood on a raised platform. He waved his arms and shouted, "Next, strong worker, barely 30 cycles. Good for mines." Bidding started. A tall insectoid creature raised its claw. Another alien in golden armor doubled the offer. The slave was sold in seconds, dragged away like cargo. One by one, the cages were emptied. But in the far corner of the market, a small cage still remained. Inside sat a girl. She was young, thin. Her skin was a soft, glowing silver. Her arms were covered in old scars. Her long hair was messy. She didn't speak, didn't look up, just sat there with wide, empty eyes. The merchant pointed at her and laughed. "Next lot. Bah, this one is broken, worthless, won't speak, won't work. She's been here for months. No one wants her." Buyers walked past. Some peeked into the cage and turned away. One even spat on the ground. "She's too weak, too strange. Probably can't even stand." Another merchant added, "We should throw her into the waste pits, no value." The girl didn't react. She just stared at the floor. That's when a new figure stepped into the market. He was tall, wore a dusty brown coat. Human, people noticed. Him. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, especially at the slave markets. He walked slowly through the crowd, eyes sharp, saying nothing. He passed the empty cages, past the sellers, past the noise, and stopped in front of the small cage in the corner. He crouched down. The girl didn't move. He looked at the merchant. "Her name?" The fat merchant laughed. "She doesn't have one. Or maybe she forgot. Been mute since capture." The human didn't laugh. He kept looking at the girl. Then he said, "I'll take her." The crowd went quiet. "Take her?" one of the nearby aliens asked. "Why? She's broken." "She's a waste of credits." The human reached into his coat, pulled out a chip. "Full price." The merchant blinked. "You're serious?" "Yes." A few others laughed. One alien even said he must be insane. But the merchant took the chip. The cage unlocked with a hiss. The girl didn't move. The human stepped forward and offered his hand. Slowly, very slowly, she lifted her eyes. For a moment, they locked with his. She expected pain. She expected orders. She expected cruelty. But he only said 2 words. "Come on." She stood up, legs shaking. Step by step, she walked out of the cage. The human took off his coat and wrapped it around her. The merchant stared in disbelief. Why would a human pay for that thing? "She's not a slave anymore," the man said calmly. "She's with me now." As they left the market, the girl looked back one last time. The cage was empty. She had no idea who he was, no idea why he chose her. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. The girl didn't speak. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't look up from the floor. She only followed the human because he had offered his coat and not a chain. He led her through the edge of the market city, past machines and rusted walls. They walked for hours, the suns lowering behind the mountains of trash and scrap. At last, they reached a quiet place, an old outpost built into the cliffside. It looked worn and forgotten, but the doors opened with a soft hum. The inside was clean, warm. The human said, "This is home. You're safe here." She didn't respond. She just stood still, staring at the wall. He didn't push her. He showed her a small room with a bed, fresh water, and soft lights. "This is yours now," he said. No bars, no orders. He left the door open. That night she sat on the bed but didn't lie down. Her hands trembled. Her eyes didn't close. When the human checked on her in the morning, he found her sitting in the same place. Awake. Silent. He didn't ask questions. He just brought food, left it near her. No pressure. For days, she said nothing. Not a sound. But she began to move. A little. She watched him fix machines, clean old tools, and build strange gadgets. He worked quietly, never yelling, never rushing. One afternoon, she crept closer and watched from behind the door. When he noticed her, he smiled. "You want to help?" She shook her head quickly, but the next day she brought him a tool he dropped. Little things. She began to eat more, sleep more. The shakes in her hands slowed. The hollow in her eyes faded slightly. Then came the first storm. Cold wind slammed against the outpost. Lightning danced across the clouds. That night the girl screamed in her sleep. The human rushed in. She was curled up on the floor crying, shaking, her hands covering her head. He didn't touch her. He sat near her calmly. "You're not there anymore," he said gently. "No one can hurt you here." She looked at him, her eyes red and wide. "Why?" she whispered. It was the first word she had spoken. He looked confused for a moment, then answered, "Because you matter." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She covered her mouth, trying not to sob. He didn't speak again. He just stayed there. That night she finally slept, with her head resting near the edge of his coat. Days passed. The girl began to move freely around the outpost. He started calling. Her Lyra means hope, he explained. Thought it fits. She didn't refuse it. Lyra. A name. Hers. She began to clean, to watch how he fixed machines. She didn't speak often, but her eyes followed everything. When he cut his hand on a sharp gear, she brought a clean cloth and pressed it to the wound. "You don't have to," he said, but she didn't let go until it stopped bleeding. At night, she sat near the fire. The human, his name was Jack, told her stories. Stories of Earth, of the sea, of wind that didn't burn, of skies filled with blue. She listened in silence, but something in her face softened. Then one evening she asked him a question. "Why, buy me?" He took a moment. "I saw a girl in a cage, and I saw everyone walk past like she was trash." He looked into her eyes. "I've seen trash. That wasn't it." She didn't smile, but she looked away, a little embarrassed. No one had ever spoken to her like that, but even as her hand steadied and her voice returned, faint but real, there were shadows watching. Eyes from far away. Someone had noticed the cage was empty. Someone who remembered her name. The quiet would not last. Lyra was healing. She smiled just once, a small one. She followed Jack's instructions and began fixing tiny devices. Her hands, once afraid to touch, now moved with focus. Her voice was still soft, but she used it. Sometimes, she even asked questions. Jack watched her with quiet pride. He never asked what happened to her before the cage. He waited. "And one day," she told him. They were sitting near the fire in the old outpost. Outside, cold wind blew across the rocky cliffs. Inside, it was silent, warm. Lyra stared into the flames. "My name was not always Lyra." Jack didn't speak. He just listened. "I was born into a noble house. My mother wore golden armor. My father sat in the High Council." Her voice trembled. "We were important, respected." She paused. Her fingers gripped her knees. Then, war came. My planet was attacked. The skies burned. Soldiers broke into our home. I hid under the floor. I heard them scream. Jack slowly sat beside her. I never saw my family again. I was taken. Sold. Again and again. She touched the scar on her wrist. They tried to break me. I stopped speaking. I stopped moving. I thought if I became nothing, they would stop hurting me. A tear rolled down her cheek. But they never stopped. Jack didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't say, "It's okay." He just placed a blanket gently around her shoulders. "You don't have to be afraid here." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. But across the stars, someone else was speaking. A face lit up on a dusty command screen in a far-off station. A soldier reported to a tall alien woman in royal robes. "Empress, we have found her. The girl, she is alive." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "After all these years, she lives?" "Yes, Your Grace. A human has taken her. From the slave market." The Empress stood. Her voice was sharp. "Send a retrieval unit. She is of royal blood. She belongs to us." Back at the outpost, Lyra didn't know what was coming, but the past had already begun to chase her. Late one night, while Jack was asleep, Lyra stepped outside for air. She looked at the stars, familiar constellations from her home world. For the first time, she thought about going back, not as a slave, but to see what remained. That's when she saw the shadow. A small drone hovered far off in the sky. Silent. Watching. She stepped back inside, heart pounding. The next day, Jack found broken footprints around the outpost. "Scouts," he muttered. "Military class." He looked at Lyra. She nodded slowly. "They found me." Jack didn't panic. He began to reinforce the door, power the shields, and ready his tools. "If they come," he said, "I'll stop them." Lyra looked down. "You can't fight an empire." "I can fight for you." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever stood for her, not when it mattered. That night, she had another nightmare. But this time, when she woke up crying, Jack was already sitting there, waiting. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. But just outside the system, a ship tore through hyperspace. Its orders were clear. Retrieve the girl. Kill the human if needed. The past was not finished with her yet, and Lyra was no longer helpless. Lyra stood at the mirror. She no longer saw a slave. Her silver skin, once dull and covered in dirt, now glowed in the warm light. Her hair was brushed, her body stronger. She still had scars, but they were fading. And her eyes, they had fire in them now. She moved through the outpost with quiet confidence. She cleaned, repaired circuits, and even improved some of Jack's machines. He never treated her like a servant. He always asked, never ordered. And when she worked, he praised her like a friend, like someone who mattered. But not everyone believed that. At the nearby trade hub, word had spread. The human who bought, the broken one. They laughed. They whispered behind his back. Lyra heard them. She was garbage. Why did he keep her? Not even good enough to sell. She walks now, but she's still useless. She said nothing, but the words echoed in her chest. That night, as Jack worked in the shop, Lyra stayed quiet. He noticed. Something wrong? She hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret buying me?" Jack looked up, surprised. "Where's that coming from?" "Everyone says I was worthless," she said. "They still say it." He stood up and walked to her. "I don't care what they say," he said. "I know who you are." She looked away. "But I wasn't strong. I wasn't smart. I wasn't even human." "You were alive," Jack said. "And scared. That's enough." He paused. "You don't need to earn your place, Lyra. You already have it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Not this time. The next day, something changed in her. She asked for tools. She fixed a drone on her own. She even spoke with a merchant and sold spare parts. Without Jack's help, he watched from a distance. "Not worthless," he said under his breath. But danger was coming. Late one night, Lyra walked into the main room. Jack was scanning transmissions, looking serious. "What is it?" she asked. He turned the screen toward her. A royal command. A bounty placed on her return. "By order of the Empress. The girl belongs to the bloodline. She is to be brought back, alive. Human interference will be punished. Lyra stepped back. They know I'm here. Jack stood up. Let them come. You don't understand, she said, panic in her voice. The Empress, she's not just a leader. She's family, my mother's sister. Jack froze. She never came for me. Before, Lyra whispered. Not when I was taken, not when I was sold. And now? She only wants me because I'm useful again, not because I'm loved. Jack's voice was firm. Then we don't let her take you. They began to prepare. The outpost's old defenses were powered on. Drones were placed outside. Emergency escape tunnels were tested. Lyra worked harder than ever. And in the quiet, Jack found her staring at her reflection again. This time he asked, "What do you see?" She took a deep breath. "I see someone who was broken, but still breathing. And?" She turned to him. "Someone who's not afraid to fight anymore." But they were running out of time. The stars above were no longer silent. Ships were moving. Scanners buzzed. The royal forces were near, and at the edge of the system a fleet gathered. Lyra's past had come to claim her, but this time she was ready. The stars above the outpost shimmered unnaturally. Jack noticed it first. He stepped out and stared up at the dark sky. Among the usual constellations, something new floated, silent, massive, and cold. A royal flagship. It didn't land. It simply hovered, watching, waiting. Inside, deep in the control room, stood the Empress. Her eyes glowed with power, her golden robe flowing like fire. She held a hologram in her hand, Lyra's face. "She is alive," the Empress said quietly. "After all these years." A commander beside her nodded. "Confirmed, Your Grace, she resides on the outpost below, protected by a human." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "She has my blood. That makes her mine." Down on the cliffside, Jack and Lyra stood by the window, watching the sky. "They found me," Lyra whispered. Jack didn't move. "Then we deal with it." Lyra stepped back. "You don't understand that ship. I know it. I once walked its halls. The Empress held me in her arms when I was a child, and now she sends soldiers. She doesn't want me," Lyra said, voice shaking. "She wants my name, my blood, my image. She needs a symbol to control others." Jack looked at her. "Are you ready to be more than a symbol?" Lyra closed her eyes. "I don't want to be a crown. I want to be free." The next morning, a royal transport landed. 10 guards in black armor stepped out. They did not knock. They marched straight to the outpost gate. Jack stood waiting. The lead soldier spoke in a cold voice. "Human, release the girl. She is royal property." Jack raised an eyebrow. "She's not property. She belongs to the Empire. She belongs to herself." There was silence. Then a second voice came, calm, sharp, and commanding. It was her, the Empress. She stepped forward in full regalia, her face smooth and unreadable. She looked past Jack and spoke aloud. "Lyra of the House Valari, I am your blood. I am your salvation. Come home." Lyra stepped forward. Jack turned in alarm, but she gave him a steady look. "I need to speak," she said. Then she faced the Empress. "You left me," Lyra said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it echoed. "When I screamed for help, you stayed silent. When I was taken, you looked away." The Empress showed no emotion. "You are alive. That is what matters." "No," Lyra replied. "What matters is who made sure I lived." She stepped back beside Jack. "I am not yours." "You are royal," the Empress snapped. "You will stand beside me again. Wear the crest. Speak to the stars. The people need hope. You can be that hope." Lyra took a deep breath. "I will give them hope, but not through you. Through truth." She raised her voice, looking into the recording drones floating above. "I was forgotten, sold, abandoned, and only one being treated me like I mattered, a human." The guards shifted uncomfortably. The Empress frowned. "Speak carefully, child." "No," Lyra said. "For the first time, I will speak freely." Up in orbit, the speech spread like fire. News channels lit up. Former slaves, broken refugees, and silent survivors across the galaxy heard her voice. They saw her not as a symbol of empire, but as proof that one act of kindness could change everything. Back on the ground, the Empress's face hardened. "Made your choice." "Yes," Lyra said. "And I'd make it again." The Empress turned. "We leave, for now." The guards followed. The ship rose back into the clouds, but the message had already been sent. Jack looked at Lyra. "You all right?" She was shaking, but she nodded. "I stood. For once in my life." I stood, and in the quiet that followed, something deep in the galaxy began to stir, because now the girl they once called worthless and had just become dangerous to an empire. The stars had heard her voice. Lyra's speech was shared across systems, across ships, across quiet rooms filled with silent pain. People who had once been slaves, broken, discarded, now listened to her words again and again. Only one being treated me like I mattered, a human. I speak freely now, and I will not stop. Those words were like fire to a frozen galaxy. Inside the outpost, Jack sat beside the window. He looked tired, but proud. Across from him, Lyra was staring at a communication tablet. Messages blinked nonstop. "Your words gave me strength. I was taken as a child, but you reminded me I'm not alone. Please speak more. We need your voice." Lyra didn't know what to say. Jack did. "You wanted to be free," he said quietly. "You are. Now they need what only you can give." She looked at her hands, hands that once trembled, once only knew how to shield from pain. Now, they were steady. They built a transmitter. It wasn't big, just enough to send messages deep through the outer rim. Jack helped her put it together. Wires, steel, energy cells. Lyra recorded her first message in her new voice. "I am Lyra. I was once a slave, forgotten by the world, but I was saved, not by war, not by blood, but by kindness." The message flew across planets like a spark on dry grass, and the Empire started to feel the heat. In the palace of the Empress, alarms sounded. Her advisors looked nervous. "She's speaking again, to millions. She's turning the people against us. She is not just a voice now, she is a leader." The Empress slammed her staff down. She is a child with a broken past, nothing more. But even she felt the ground shift under her golden feet. Meanwhile, Lyra received a visitor. A ship landed, small, old, barely flying. An alien man stepped out, tall, gray-skinned, with glowing eyes. "I saw your speech," he said. "I escaped the mines 2 years ago. Been hiding since. I didn't believe in anything. Until you." Lyra didn't know what to say. He knelt before her. "Tell me what to do." "I will follow," Jack whispered behind her. "You're building something now, something bigger than both of us." Within days, more ships came. Not armies, but survivors. Some were wounded, some were afraid, some could barely speak, but they came. They stood near the outpost, silent, waiting, hoping. Lyra spoke to them under the open sky. "You are not worthless. You were never broken. You were silenced. But now you speak." She raised her hand. "And no one can stop us now." Jack walked beside her later that evening. "You've become something they'll never understand," he said. "Not a queen, not a rebel. A voice," she said. "A voice they tried to destroy," he added. "But it lived." She looked up at the stars. "They won't let this go, Jack. They'll come, harder, stronger." He smiled. "Then we meet. Them as we are." Lyra touched his hand, grateful, not as a master, not as a savior, as someone who stood beside her when no one else would. Above them, the royal fleet grew restless. A new order was given. Burn the outpost. Kill the human. Silence the girl. But this time, They would not find her alone. They would find an army, made not of soldiers, but of survivors who had found their voice again. The sky turned black. Dozens of warships appeared above the cliffs, royal banners glowing like fire. The Empire had returned, and this time they weren't here to talk. They came with guns. They came to erase a voice. Inside the outpost, Lyra stood at the center, calm but focused. Around her stood the survivors, former slaves, outcasts, forgotten beings from 100 worlds. None of them had armor. None of them had armies, but they had her. And they had hope. Jack stood by her side, rifle on his back, eyes steady. "They'll attack first," he said. "I know," Lyra replied. "But they don't understand something." "What's that?" "I'm not the girl they left behind in a cage." The first strike came like thunder. Explosions rocked the edges of the cliffs. The outpost shields flared and held, for now. Royal soldiers landed in black drop pods, dozens of them, marching in lines, weapons ready. The survivors didn't run. They stood with Lyra. A royal commander stepped forward. "By order of the Empress, surrender the girl. No mercy will be given to those who resist." Lyra stepped ahead of the crowd. "I'm not just the girl anymore. I am Lyra Valari, blood of your empire, proof of your failure. And these people, your so-called trash, stand free today, not because of fear, but because of one choice." She pointed to Jack. A human made that choice, when no one else would. The commander raised his weapon. So be it. But just before the order to fire was given, the sky changed. New ships appeared, unregistered independent vessels. One by one they joined the edge of the fight. They were captains, traders, rebel miners, smugglers, people who had heard Lyra's voice across the stars, and they had come to fight for her. A signal cracked through every comm. "To those aiming at that girl, know this. You are pointing your weapons at someone we now follow. You are outnumbered." The eyed commander hesitated. The Empress, watching from orbit, snarled in rage. "Fire!" But the soldiers on the ground didn't move. Some lowered their guns. Others backed away slowly. They looked at Lyra, and then at their orders, and chose silence. Because they knew this was no longer a war. This was a reckoning. The Empress ordered a full orbital strike, but her ships were blocked by the rebel vessels now forming a shield wall between the planet and her wrath. "You'll burn for this," she screamed. "You're nothing but a child." Lyra sent a final message. "I may be a child, but I am not alone." The battle ended without a single blast, because when enough people remember their worth, even the mighty choose silence. Weeks later, the Empire's reach began to crumble. Planets once ruled by fear rose up. Voices long silenced spoke again, and across it all, the name Lyra echoed like a spark of light. In the quiet outpost, Lyra walked. Through the garden Jack had built, the flowers bloomed in strange colors. The sun warmed her skin. Survivors had become citizens, builders, healers. Jack handed her a small data pad. "Another message?" She smiled. "From a girl on the other side of the galaxy. She said her father used to call her worthless too." Jack chuckled. "Not anymore, I bet." Lyra sat beside him. "All this," she whispered, "started because one person saw value in someone no one else did." Jack shrugged. "Wasn't hard to see." Lyra looked at him. "You changed my life, Jack." He nodded. "You changed the galaxy." And so the story ended. Not with war, not with crowns, but with one truth. One life, no matter how small, can break 1,000 chains. If someone just believes it's worth saving.